Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. It's Shirley with Spirit of Matter. And the moon is now crossing our goals, separating from conjunction to Uranus. And Sun is applying to square Neptune, while Moon is sextiling Neptune, trining Pluto. Made a talisman earlier today. A lot came up. And as I go back, I see for 20 hours ago, they were opening up the Trump cabinet for kind of like Me Too accusations. For those that watch my channel, you know, it starts from the children, and it continues on. So it's way worse than what they tell you, and it's very likely that Trump himself and all the cabinet was also abused since childhood. That's how they pick these people. And this aims at an even more tremendous topic. Venus opened a synodic cycle with Pluto. She's in Aquarius now. And indeed, what the sex scandal was about the community. Okay? And Aquarius is a community. Venus separating from Pluto, still square to Mars, we get in a notion that what controls our economy and resources and seeks to divide and conquer, and we see it in the medical field and doing inversion of religion, inversion of spirituality, okay? It doesn't stop at intimate and sexual relations. So I began to talk about the tradwife trend when I was doing the half moon, and there was another place where I was doing half moon where I didn't even record. There were very intense things coming with various cultures to do with incest, problematic relationships with the matrilineage, and so on. And that brings in a topic, because right now we are having, especially with the moon Neptune and Saturn approaching, we are more exposed, okay? Venus went from Pluto, she's going to go towards Neptune. We are more exposed, and with the Uranobeta per se, to the fact that the cult-like lifestyle or social engineering, or whichever you want to call it, it all the way down to the fact that people have relationships, and even intimate relationships and sexual relationships, and even self-pleasure, that fits a certain agenda. It's not that they're always aware of that, but that is what the cult wants, dictates. So who will you date? How will you date? What will be your relational trauma? Who will you have affair with? And they dictate types of relations as trend, like the tradwife trend. Okay? It's so much so when I was teaching English and I had a student and she liked the K-pop. And there was a trend of a BDSM. And she told me something. And I said, well, you want to check that. Is it coming from you? Or is it coming because you saw it online? If some is coming from you, that's yours. As long as it's safe, sane, and consensual when it's time, okay, then. But if some is not coming from you, you want to be aware of your sexual sovereignty. You have a right to say yes, no, and maybe, not only on the constellation of actual relations, but also when it comes to what the trend is. Now, it's not something new. But I think the deep, profound understanding that, let's say you go to a cult, okay, you go to a temple, or you go to a youth a program, okay, or you go and you meet with people, or you have a meetup, even if with your soccer team, okay, there's a group dynamic there. Now, not only that, you need to do networking, right? Everybody tells you need to do networking. Then you get invited to a secret party. There's the rites there, there's the thing there. But you know, and they know, that if you won't do the rites, you won't be a lawyer, a doctor, a psychologist. It's not just the filmmaking. And what that means, it means that your chances of doing something that is the sort of the closest to the ikigai, the closest to what the world needs, what I want, what I'm good at, what I can get paid for, what's the closest to that ikigai, you won't be able to do that without the cult, because you need a certification, right? And that means that if you won't be in your ikigai, it would be very difficult for you to find a partner, man or woman, that is going to align with your inner true self. Because if you're not aligned with your inner true self, how will you have a happy, thriving relationship? Now you go and you do these rites, that's already self-betrayal. And it feels like a 22 catch, because either you're not going to have, you grew up into it, that's even more difficult, because they pinpoint you by blood type, and wherever you go, you see them trying your targeted individual. Whether your family brings you there, or they make an illusion of consent, and there are 1,000 ways to do that. The mother of Anneke Lucas was driving her because she would meet the world politicians. A young girl would be raped by world politicians, and the mother wanted to be invited to these places. They would rape and torture her as well, but she didn't know that, and she was starstruck. So she was so happy, and they presented such an honor for her daughter to participate. And the daughter said, "I don't want," and the mother's like, "No." Then this girl gets programmed. Then she's used the sex espionage. Then she's programmed to send urges to people to act in a certain way that fits for what the agenda is. And she doesn't know. By the way, until I wrote on her page, we had a testimony of Lars that says Wilders and Rutte, they also were abused, not just abusive. I didn't wrote her about Lars, but I said I see that from testimonies that these politicians or these people, they were also growing up in that Disneyland death camp, okay? She's supposed to be 60-something today. She's the age of some of these politicians, and she didn't know that. Thanks to Lars, we have a testimony. Because usually we'd have a testimony for somebody was abused. And we wouldn't know, we wouldn't connect. Because it's always you're a younger child, and then they would put an older person. And Lars had the dignity to say, with all the rage, that they were also abused. That creates a situation where the relational style, so much as the sexual fantasy and erotic ideation, okay? I did a talisman today for the moon sextile Neptune, okay? Moon in good harmony aspect to Neptune can give erotic ideation and romantic ideation that is spiritual and is real. You really do have something spiritual together when there is a good moon Neptune aspect. Or moon Venus. It can be very real. Okay, now you need to see where the oppositions are, and unfortunately they usually are. Because this is where you live in La La Land. Okay? And so there's a difference And there's a difference between there is erotic ideation, and while you idealize each other, you can also see the real facets, and the ideation helps to smoothen up the roughness. Okay? And that's very important. It can be a heart balm. If it's Neptune Sun, harmonious aspect, this is... I believe that I've had such incidents maybe once in my life, and I cannot say I'm still recovering, because it's nothing to recover from. It's a heart bomb. It's not somebody that I can be with. But the harmonious aspects, that's great. It's a remediation for many, many things. Now, when the aspects are not harmonious, or let's put it that way, if we forget about Neptune for a second, what the cult is interested is creation of erotic ideation that ends up in betrayal, shock, letdown. And it is so much so that there are teams of people that go into the dream state to orchestrate these things, so that people will mutually be let down from each other, betray each other, have misunderstandings. Now, as a relational astrologer, I can say a synastry is intricate enough. So they would bring you together against all odds, and then they would want to create of what they own according to the cult's interest. And as a person who's had working done on me in that regard, it goes into loopholes that you're like, what the fuck is happening? And I'm not a twin flame club person. They work at creating synchronicities. They work at dissolving synchronicities. They work at attempting at causing betrayal. They will work in a way that, let's say I would say something on a video, okay? And I wouldn't know that that triggers a person. Or they would do or say something and they wouldn't know what that was meant to trigger another person. And the other way around. That's the light stuff, relatively. Now, there are certain dynamics that are grooming dynamics. And essentially, it's going to be in a couple of trends. One is the finessing. Okay, and you see, you'll have influencers come and say, okay, for one example that I saw, I'm not going to name no names. Hey, you think that what is sugaring or whatnot, a man giving you money because you weren't offered, you think is wrong. Okay? It's not about, you say, oh, I would never do that. It's not about a moral judgment. That is done to finesse something that later confiscates certain wealth, that later is done psychological abuse, that later is done sexpionage, and later that person is used. And sexpionage is not the erotified version of somebody who seduces people. No, somebody who's raped, tortured, dissociated, drugged, electrocuted, and then they go out and about and they will be with whomever, and they would deliver information. They would also plant urges. That's what it is. Okay, in the kin community, there were trends of people wanting to have a palace of women. Okay, it is a structure where the cult interlays and then puts again the sexpionage. where of course it's no longer safe, sane, and consensual, right? And they create erotic ideation of particular things. So sometimes you think you have fantasies, not even your fantasy. My psychologist tried to implant a fantasy that I would like to have be transported between men. And I'm like, no, I don't have that fantasy. I'm vanilla, thank you very much. But I get child assassin Alter who could probably kill you, thank you very much. And they try to plant things with animals. Unfortunately, by the time that I got to therapy, I was in my 30-somethings. And then what happens when you say no? Then, of course, they don't write that they had tried to implant something. They said the patient had that and that and that fantasy. I didn't even bother to look, and I don't need to look. From the behavior of what they try to do, I can see what the makeup of this look like, and it looks like very bad makeup. And that's where you go to therapy. Okay, so they tell you you cannot heal without talking about the trauma. Then you begin to talk. At first you cannot talk. I went to EMDR, it's Scientology. And the guy got cold feet when I actually began a little bit of healing, so that God forbid I wouldn't leave the cult. I had to stop that. Then I go to another person, and what happens there is fragments of therapy with a lot of MK Ultra. And so and that would be interlaid with the places where you're supposed to feel belonging. So if it's not your parent, then it would be someone that is like someone's like a caregiving figure, someone that you look up to, okay? And they teach you a relational style. Now, not all the things they teach you are bad, okay? If I go back to yes, it's a good thing if you're a public figure to know that you want to keep your relational style flexible and open to directives, because there can be mishaps with these things. And if it goes so much so that the children are programmed, and if you're in the cult and you're programmed to program as well for the children to do that, which it goes to that deep level of horror, then you're told, okay, it's kind of like, hey, you want to keep, you don't want to promise too much, and you want to give the same freedom to another. Now then what happens when after kids, then you got to make sure that freedom is kept for both partners, and that can be another issue. But the thing is, sometimes you would get that, okay, sharing that information, because you try to have some sort of a friendship and relationship within a situation that is horrendous, that is a cult, a death cult, an incest cult, a sex cult, a pedophilia cult, where everybody got hurt, okay? It's a type of, it's no wonder why there's so much drug trafficking in there, because you think about all these things, and the fact that even if you try to go to therapy, let's say you had a safe place that they knew what to do and they know what to do, then they don't want you to leave the cult, because if you, God forbid, recover, then what? You'll be having a happy relationship, happy family, you would want to travel, you would want to relax, you would want to rest, and you want to do something that actually yields. My insisting on working on the half moons to grow a forest, to bless the area, okay? It's almost a crusade. Now, it's not a crusade for me. I just do something useful that yields. But the resistance turns it to almost a crusade. So it turns out you have to be a part of these societies to have any sort of diploma. Don't look at me. I did first degree in English, linguistics, and politics and governance. Of course, I got a diploma. That gives you nothing. For the second degree, as you can see, I didn't finish that second degree because there are certain deals with certain devils that I didn't do. And I don't mean my bosses. I mean actual devil. I had no idea until the 2024. I had no idea that Faust was a documentary. And you have to be entangled with one of that if you want to have an intimate relationship. But if you're entangled with one of that, you have the inversion of an intimate relationship. Everybody suffers. I saw men, okay? If I had to describe how fluffy they are emotionally, I'd say it's like a cozy blanket in the winter with his cozy shoes and cozy socks that you just want to cuddle with and more. They take these guys and they try to make them groomers. It ends up in a gigantic fragmentation because they are supposed to rape, they are supposed to torture, they are supposed to betray, and they program these sides into them. And it's not like they have for a place to go, and it's an entanglement of belongings that they shake the person's center up. And you see, I'm half Dutch. We got 2 meters of people. And I'm not even kidding you. Okay? We got 2 meters of people. They try to decenter that. In every which way. So they can get their controlling things. The myth of the crazy artist. And if you want to think, is there a myth of an artist that was not crazy, that was just painting serene pictures of joy? I have to say it again, Adolf Hitler, until they sent him on an intelligence mission. Now, I must have sounded like a crazy person the first time I said that, but the more you begin to ask yourself about art, about finances, about what ideas you have to believe in the cult and write books about, otherwise you stay homeless. You see that the 1920s paintings of serene nature were pretty much some of the sanest pieces of art we had in the 20th century going to the 21st century. Now people would tell you it is not interesting. When is something not like this? Okay. Yes. When is something like this not interesting? They tell you, oh, when you have it every day. Not really. Because there's a nervous system that goes into that. For 3 years, I had a garden every day. I still grow with the garden. It's not interesting to me. You're constantly growing. It's not interesting when a person is electrocuted, raped, tortured, traumatized so much that how did Sophia, I don't remember the name, Sophia, she has a couple of songs, she's a fantastic artist. MK Ultra through and through, a fantastic artist. You said you feel comfortable in the safety of danger. Then, seeing something peaceful, you immediately think, who is going to haunt you? What is going to happen? And you say, Shirley, but some people have Scorpio placement. I have 3 of them. And Navamsha Sol Tropical Scorpio. The waters of the well, when they are fresh and clean, we'd have a totally different outlook on Scorpio. And it's not for nothing. The Scorpio is constantly transforming and rejuvenating. The Pluto Scorpio are here to rejuvenate the well water, which is what I'm doing. I'm growing a forest everywhere I go. אפשר גם לשתול את זה.
ענקית כזאת,
אפשר גם לשתול את זה.
אבל אין לי ידנית. צריך להוציא גם שורשים.
כן. כי זה יצא עם השורשים.
תגידי,
זה יצא עם השורשים.
כן? זה ימינה, נכון? ליד האוניברסיטה, כאילו לכיוון ההוא?
There, I'm recording. Anyway, so the wormwood is getting praise. It is beautiful, you saw it. It's gigantic and it's just lush. It wanted to grow with me. And it's got praise, so we put some in the water. So yeah. It's bringing comforting. It's something like very comforting about this wormwood. Cozy home. So what's important to understand is that awareness to this creates an untangling. Because first of all, we're at a time in history where, thank you, thanks, where these cults are going to be a little bit persecuted. Okay, we should not be ashamed to say that, because it's happening, okay? It's already began to happen, and we can't say it's okay. We there's a lot of things that we can't say about that. And that we need to keep in mind. We can't say that we don't know why it happens. People had masses of ritual sacrifice. We can't say we don't know what they want from us. Okay? And each and every one had some of these cults in their ancestry. Doesn't matter, you come from Morocco, you come from Tunis, you come from Algeria, you come from Iran, you come from Congo, Kenya, US, Europe, all of Europe, Russia, China, Falun Gong is Masons. The sky doesn't punish the land, that's an inversion. It goes all the way back there. India. So we have the idyllic of the similarities that we find. I don't know what's the story of these similarities, and was there a taking over and taking down of many things, but we do have diversity and similarity within that diversity. At the same time, since indigenous tribes and as humanity, there were all kinds of habits that now are frowned upon, and you have to make sure that those that supposedly frown upon are not practicing those either. So it's a time historically where there's a lot of persecution for those type of lodges and societies and everything cultist. We had it in 2017, the beginning of that, around the Me Too, because the Me Too was basically cult, and what we say MK Ultra is cult, okay? And how that interlays with world control. So it's a time where it's a good thing to be willing to disentangle things that we may have not had opportunity to disentangle for quite some centuries. And just put in space, okay? Uranus is space. Just spacing up our neural activity around that, creating awareness, is supposed to do what people do in therapy. But they don't let anybody do therapy. And then you get, for the people that are trained, they have to be in the cult. The people that are not trained, they can, as to what they're not trained, they can try to sift and sort. But then, of course they're not trained. Of course, they're going to make mistakes naturally. And then they're going to say, oh, but they need certification. For the certification, they need to be trained. And then they get the inversion of medicine. And it's creating such trouble and situation where people can feel so terribly at loss with what they did, where it's like, hey, okay, well, let's try to recover. Let's try to see what's happening here, to not create betrayal. And people have to tend to themselves. And it's involved with indigenous tribes. Okay, so it's not just the Western society or just modern society, not at all. When you do the half moon in the soil, you get a calling to work here, work there. And we talk about families, crime families, incest-based cults, lineages that intermix with one another, okay? How cultures affected one another, okay? For example, some cultures like Middle Eastern cultures, they have more the emotional openness, this very curating for people that always hold everything within. And people that really, even from the surrounding of working with these people, is a combination of that, okay? And then there's the overall dumb fuckery of child weddings, the dual standards that we give about what we call respect, when there's a giant industry to, I'm sorry, fuck people's psyche over, so much so that to the dumb fuckeries of dumb fuckeries, and then go ahead, get married. Now now it's not your fault, because your partner, man or woman, he's gonna listen to the trad wife, and he's expecting a maiden. You're gonna listen to the trad wife. You're gonna see, oh, that sounds like a doula. That sounds like massaging my feet every night. Okay, that sounds like, sipping pineapples and lychee that we grew organically, so it's gonna taste good down there for both of us. Okay, it's a different point of view. Now he's expected to show something from the cult that he had evidence. If you go for the orthodoxy of some streams in Judaism, they have to show a white sheet with red blood. That's not sex. And then for the show, they hang it outside and everybody go, woo! I'm not joking. It's actually, we had neighbors completely secular. They hanged a sheet once. Again, it was maybe stains from the menstruation or something. And people say, oh, Mazel Tov. Congratulations. Now, if you think that this is just Jews, and it's like, I'm not Jew, it's nothing Jewish about me, not Jew, okay? You think they don't have, what do you think was the stealth trend in Great Britain? Everybody had to take off the condoms and rape women. That the woman consents to sex, she likes sex, that it's okay with you, then you take off the condom, you turn it into rape. Now, of course, that's created an influx on the gynecology. That's what they wanted. On the juristic system, there's a lot of money changing hands. And it tries to test out how will people oppress one another in sex and in intimate relationships. And then if you want to grow a family, they say, okay, let's go to the trad wife trend. Then I can grow a family, have the trad wife, and then I can support my family. Then you have, let's say you got the trad wife and you rub her feet and you tell them, yeah, fuck yourself. It's not in so many words. But you say, yes, of course, yes, of course, yes, of course. Then you go and make love to your wife and you're a happy man. Everything is fine. But then you have to traffic children. They set you up with sex espionage. So now the woman thinks she's disrespectful. You think she's disrespectful. Everybody thinks she's disrespectful. Nobody knows she was raped and tortured and programmed until you got to her. And then all of her disrespect won't explain what you're doing in bed with her. And when you take into account the astral, okay, then you can say, okay, we can relax requirements for monogamy because those stuff obviously happen. They reduce the age. Now, if you were tortured yourself, it's very difficult, and we all need connection. I'm not even talking about sex. Bifurcation in sexual energy, they occur upon trauma. Some people go to the astral and try to self-pleasure, say, I'm not alone. It's not just my experience. Many men and women experience that. For the various range of experiences, okay? Now the cult has a lot of interest around it, but it wants to control you from the sexuality. And you're going to put a lot of social pressure, whether it's to be a man, to be a woman. Men love beaches, women love lover boys. And the more they can juxtapose for these things, the more people get disgust of each other instead of being attracted, and they would take for the most emotional people. It's not just for entertainment, it's for entrapment. And then they'll tell you, oh, enough with that, sex with women is gay. The same people that started as traffickers, okay? It's no longer allegedly. Then they talk about architecture with Thierry Boudet. Black nobility for you. Black nobility. It was given a little bit of Scientology. I said what I said, people run to Scientology to escape the Masons. But there was an MK. There was an MK. Now you ask, what about the Trump administration? There's a Me Too. It's not a Me Too, okay? Entire cabinet. It's not a Me Too. What also Trump? What did you think? Because he's orange that he's not? It's because of his color? Now if you ask what these people have to do, it's give in Brussels the Qua 1996. And you have a huge pile of fluff. You said that person did that. I'll tell you a real segment that I saw for woman interviews. She was married to a husband for 13 years. They had a daughter or son. And she described him, she said he was a gentle giant. The name was Pete. Pete was a gentle giant. And one day he's arrested by the police. And he was. And she also saw for testament that this was not made up. She said, I was married to the most tender, gentle, loving man and father. Of course, I needed to see that with the name Pete. If you know, you know. So that's a little reality check. Now you say that can happen everywhere. Of course that can happen everywhere. In the cult, it is designed to happen. And that's funny to say in some of the supposedly best of cases where you actually have intimate relationship with the gentle giant. when I first did my channeling experiment, and I was channeling to see who is like sexually okay, who is not. There was, for this author that I like, this is a pedo, for this is a pedo, for this is a pedo, and this is a pedo, and I thought that I'm getting false answers. In retrospective, I said, what, all of them? That's the meaning of that cult, that they wouldn't, that's what's up. What else also? And I had that one too. But that was yes, that was a woman. The woman today, they're in the lodges. They open lodges for women. So how they pick, they don't pick. They grow them like that. Bill Clinton apologized for MK Ultra in 1995 and apologized for cloning people. That we may have technologies that were made that he basically admits cloning. That's Bill Clinton in the United States. If you go to Netherlands, we have the emoji of a clown. It means clone. I didn't know it. The first time I saw that, they do this, and then for the first time I was answering to somebody, and I was putting that emoji thinking it means clown, and I get for one of the beings around me was like, what was that? I was getting Dutchified, but I didn't even know that means clone. Apparently that's the thing that everybody knows. But I met the Dutch woman, okay, as I told you the other day. We're talking about candles and say you can light a nice candle if you're with the man and this. And I said, well, listen, for me with the blood type, ik ben niet clone, but they want to make a matchmaking. And they say clone and say the clone. Yes, and I give the two sign. You say, clone. yeah, clone. I say, for the blood, oei. Because she was telling me, listen, I'm 70, I was happily married, I was this, I was that. And as I'm speaking with her, I realized what is going on. It's the blood type. I have no idea what my blood type tells them. But I see astrologically Aries next to my Mercury, and I see so many attempts to get me into relationships. And you see, if that's free matchmaking. But if that was, but why with people that are either married or groomers or both? I want a happy relationship. I'm not looking for a triangulation dynamic. And all of this relational dynamic that we have in society at large, because you see, when you watch social media, it's lodges speaking to lodges. And then the common people, they're like, okay, there's a side effect of that. The you don't know what's coming is first of all for the lodges. And then, of course, very likely will tell you, oh, you don't need to worry about that. We have this, we have that. You're going to live forever. We're going to put you in the freezer. We're going to defreeze you like Disney. You're like, no, thank you. I lived in this death camp, but memento mori. longevity. So yeah, there is a little bit of a reality shock because those circles, Aries is on Andromeda, and Andromeda is reconciliation. It's basically Aries becomes, she receives a seat at the table. But with Aries, it's the Ubermensch project and it's the elite. We've been told Aries is the marginalized in society, is the outcast, is the this, because they've built a lot of narrative around that. And it's true, there are people who try to make changes in society, but Aries is the elite. If you got something Aries, you got an Ubermensch in the family, you got a clone in the family, you got a cult in the family, you got a reptilian in the family, okay? Whatever you want to call it, you got the person that went through intense torture. Now, of course, there are people with the Aries asteroid that's not, okay, they're not elite and not this and all that, but the thing is that it's also associated with the Ubermensch project. I haven't seen anybody talking about this but me, although we know that she's the bringer of chaos, and the chaos is very important. Okay, order out of chaos, then Aries is the bringer of chaos, and it's about mind control. I haven't seen all the things of Gigi Yang, so she probably covers that in another way. I know she's Christian now. So that might be another perspective. And because Aries is about that which is outcast, that there is that theme. So it's difficult to find communication with the Aries people. And so that's the time where the one not invited to the party is now a member at the table, and now they find out all the weird etiquettes that they have. Okay, they cannot invite you the next time if you put your fork in the wrong place on the table. But what are we having for dinner? It may involve children. And there's an attempt to bridge here something where it's obvious that there's a lot to disentangle when it comes to for the upbringing, for the relational dynamics. And because it's been so ingrained, and because people genuinely want connection even within these tremendously difficult situations, where torture unfortunately is paramount in all ways and circles, and what the common people know. I want a healthy relationship, not a toxic relationship, okay? They don't even have a reference for that. And if you think that they have no hearts or have no, it's some of the most fluffiest people you'll ever meet. They have other personas, it's true, because they were tortured. They're some of the most fluffiest people you'll ever meet. Perceptive, emotive, containing, warm, caring. You get people, in Netherlands, you get people that 2 meters, head of this, head of that, not a slight condescendence when you meet them, when people meet them. Okay, I haven't met in person, but you see what the social interactions. Now, of course, it's programmed like this, it's programmed like that. Yeah, but it's also a person. It's a phase, it's an aspect of the person. There are other aspects there. The whole program is torturers, the program is murderers, the program is groomers, is all of that. So going back to the Trump administration, naturally, these people are handpicked. They groomed since childhood. Storylines they don't even know. Some dissociated. Orchestrated with interlays of artificial intelligence creating these movies. And for every field that they cannot say it's pseudo, it's pseudo, it's pseudo, if enough people go to that, they need to embrace that. Now they're creating versions around this. So working with the moon as sextile in Neptune and trine in Pluto, with the fifth lunar dimension has been remediating a little bit, creating a little bit of space with those moon issues. It's still a conjunction to a retrograde Uranus. I didn't call it in, but it's like the transit right now. And verbally speaking is something that's important, or expression or artistic expression is important. Jaguar Wright on that note says something very smart. She said, why did we have such a 27 club? They want them, when you're gone, you make more money than when you're alive. Okay, it's way less romantic than the Saturn Pisces 28 club. But Pisces is also liquid assets. When a person is assassinated, sometimes they're more profitable, and they can play with that card. They can raise it up when they want, and they can ignore it in the media when they want to. Even the person themselves think, okay, am I better living or dead at this point in time? And then when they want, they try to assassinate a legacy. Those who remember the JFK assassination, but then those who remember Yitzhak Rabin assassination. Unfortunately, in Netherlands, we have a younger generation that remembers Peter de Vries assassination. And when you put all that I said all together, you get a picture that explains how Neptune, that rules movies, reality, dreams, spirituality, is also ruling drugs. Moon, Neptune, remediatory aspects, okay, sextile, trine, they're not easy aspect at all. But they can facilitate, especially when the moon is in Taurus, particularly when the moon is in Taurus right now. Okay? I didn't do another talisman today, and perhaps that was a mistake. But I felt like I needed to rest, and I hope I will get to do it in a good conditions next month as well. Wanted to go for a Sedna talisman, but I'm very exhausted. Moon in Taurus in the fifth lunar dimension is an emotional problem solver. With Neptune, there's a heart balm that can facilitate. It can facilitate that. A lot of what we think about the moon has no funding in the truth, because what we have is the inversion of moon cults. If you are in any way Luciferian, okay, I'm not saying all Luciferians are Satan, but you want to sift and sort, okay? It's like when I work with Algol, I call it very specific energy. It's very protective. It's Medusa Gorgon, okay? It's not the snake goddess that people sacrifice to. Same with Anabalgadi. So just putting some awareness into the process is important. It can facilitate a little bit of recovery, healing, tending to stress release, okay? You're gonna hear about a lot of the Biden thing. Is just like it's only the beginning. Okay, it was a synodic cycle where I think it was Victor first who noticed there's gonna be a sex scandal. Now Aquarius has to do with communities. Pluto has to do with politics, but also cults. So that was on the Democracy Now! Channel. Again, not a BBC, CNN, okay? I'm not sure if we'll see that in a larger scale. Maybe we would, maybe we wouldn't, because Pluto is also attempt to control for the mass media, which means there may or may not be a banking crisis we're not even aware of, by the way. We just want to be prepared for the opportunity. It's not necessarily an opportunity. For some people, it's a lucrative opportunity, but we may not be even aware. Because this is a time where we don't hear about everything in the news. More so than even other times. Or let's say the things that we don't hear about in the news are way more gigantic. I remember Pluto was in Capricorn. There was a news about oil leaking in United States. Nobody know. Nobody broadcasted. Okay. There are death in concentration camps for homeless today in United States. That's the violation of the First Amendment, okay? My American colleagues cannot talk about this. the bridging between worlds. And I talked about Saturn Neptune as the lifting of the veil and the bridging between worlds. Neptune is also longing, deep longing. You can there can be familiarities. First of all, we don't know what's in our DNA, but it can be familiarities that are both orchestrated and not. And with Neptune, it feels like the message in a bottle that came from the bottom of the ocean. It's very powerful, and it's kind of an ET phone home thingy. Where it's like, oh my God, how you been? How you doing? How you that? Well, I can't believe. What are you two doing together? I don't know. I just met this person, and have you any idea how many people they tortured? When I was in Netherlands, I was staying one night at a lady's home after the shelter was closed. Not really closed, but closed for me. They would expel people, especially if you had a meeting with the municipality to get your papers fixed. Then the day before, 2 days before, 3 days before, they would say, no, it's closed. And there was a guy driving me for this lady's house with the community, okay? And I say, he tells, yeah, I helped a lot of women, a lot of this. Then I say, okay, nice. I go with her, and she makes him a meal, and to me as well. And then he goes on another place. And I say, he told me, yes, he helped the women and this and that. She said, was that before or after he murdered them? He was a serial killer for a job, I guess. The next day I would find myself at the airport. They wanted me to be his roommate. They weren't building on longevity. You come back from that, you see the world differently. It's very difficult to bridge that to people. A lot of things that are made and orchestrated to get people into that state that you call, well, everybody needs to have a job. Well, housing, well, you need to live somewhere. And it's meant to exhaust.